boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion, like how a single word could make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. And all those things I didn't say are wrecking balls inside my brain. I will say them loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I still got a lot of fight left in me. Losing friends and I'm chasing something. Everybody's worried about me. In too deep. Say I'm in too deep. It's been 2 years and I miss my home. But there's a fire burning in my bones. Still believe, yeah, I still believe. And all those things I didn't say are wrecking balls inside my brain. I will say them loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I still got a lot of fight left in me. A lot of fight left in me. Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion, like how a single word could make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I still got a lot of fight left in me. 'Cause I still got a lot of fight left in me.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Mike Nelson, and let me be one of the first to say happy holidays. We can say that now since Thanksgiving is now only 4 days away. Go Lions. Maybe not. Thank you for spending this hour with us today. We know there are a lot of things in your mind right now, like what this year's Thanksgiving spread will look like, maybe? We can all agree on turkey, but often the rest of our Thanksgiving spread is reliant on Grandma's recipes that have been passed through the generations, or Aunt Karen's preference of pumpkin pie, even though apple is clearly superior. Mashed potatoes or sweet potatoes, apple pie, pumpkin pie. It's polarizing. It's confrontational, but we went there. We went to social media, the place where all debates are settled, to ask you, the people of Kensington, which of these Thanksgiving sides reign superior. Here we go. In the mashed versus sweet potato mashup, mashed potatoes came in a clear winner at 76%. Sorry, Aunt Karen. In the battle between green bean casserole and glazed carrots, the green bean casserole gets a seat at the table this year with a whopping 72% victory over glazed carrots. And this year, hopefully you're passing the rolls and not the biscuits, because rolls won by a landslide. And when it comes to dessert, drum roll please, pumpkin pie just barely pulled ahead at 54% over apple pie. That is an outrage. Now hey, Thanksgiving may look different this year, just like everything else in 2020, right? But we are still abundantly blessed in many ways. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, a few Kensington families shared what they are thankful for in this season.
Eloise, what are you thankful for? In Elsa.
Thankful for Elsa?
Yeah.
Super grateful for my wife Maria, our 3 amazing boys, and our beautiful foster daughter.
I'm so thankful for sunny days where I can be outside getting some fresh air, even in the month of November.
I am so thankful for the support of my family and friends, especially my sister and my mom.
What am I thankful for?
Crystal.
This girl.
For my dog Bitsy and my bird Twitter, and that we have a house and food and water.
I'm thankful for teenagers, even ones that indulge your mom to do this.
At the top of my gratitude list this year is all of you. This community is unbelievable. You show up, jump in, and move out when things get tough, like you did just this past weekend with Thanksgiving baskets. Thanks to your generosity and willingness to lend a helping hand, we were able to meet the needs of 8,000 neighbors. Thank you for embodying the spirit of Thanksgiving as we continue to walk alongside families in our community. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And now, let's get ready for week 4 of How to Take a Hit.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kensington on this snowy, first
Craig,
snowy day of...
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Well, you already did, but no.
Sorry, I just kind of ran out of time
What are you
this
doing
week.
up here?
But this week is Thanksgiving, and I didn't get to write my thank you notes.
All
Is it
right,
okay if we?
Listen, I got an important job here.
Let me just take
There's
a minute.
all these people
Can-
here.
you guys,
There's
can I just
thousands
take a minute
online.
real quick? Can I take a minute? Is that fine? You okay with it? Okay, they want it. New guys.
All right,
Am
go
I
for
right?
it.
All righty, here we go. Thank you, Zoom call Thanksgiving. If there ever was a year to have a mute button during dinner conversation, this is it. Grandpa's always so pleasant during talk. Thank you, insulated garage with a TV. You're like the kids' table, but for dads. It's the little things. Thank you, middle school girl cousins, for getting grandma to learn and record a questionable dance for TikTok after dinner. If someone is gonna go viral, it's definitely her, not you. Man, that's definitely the wrong reason to look up to grandma, right? Thank you, Detroit Lions, for showing us every year that Mom didn't marry Dad because of his emotional stability, but rather his loyalty that is stronger than American-made steel. Are they going to win this year? They have you so set up. You are just ready for it. Okay. Thank you, millennial parents, for boldly making an unreasonable list of ingredients that are not allowed at Thanksgiving this year because of your child's allergies. Why is millennial so hard to spell? Next time you can't figure out how to spell it, think of me. Thank you, Grandpa, for boldly making it known that you think all of those allergies are made up. Though we remain silent, through you, our voices are heard. I guess Grandma likes Grandpa the way she likes her cigarettes, with no filter. And finally, thank you, high-maintenance grandkids, for making Grandma change her legendary, passed down for generations, everyone's favorite, specialty dessert masterpiece recipe into a version that is gluten-free, dairy-free, fat-free, soy-free, free-range, sugar-free, vegan, red dye 5-free, and allergen-free. No, for real, honestly, thank you. See, Craig, where are you? See, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah, that was bad.
Alrighty.
While you're up here, any other personal business you need to take care of?
No, just
or anything?
thank you for you guys letting me
All
do
right.
that. I'm
All
out
right.
of here. Peace.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving. It's coming soon, maybe a little different this year. And there's a lot of truth in that, right? Just in my family alone, the 5 of us, we have a vegetarian, we have 2 with celiacs, we have gluten-free, we have lactose intolerant, And fortunately, I'm tolerant of every food and all foods. So I'm on the list. I can eat anything except good vegetables. So anyhow, we're so glad you're here today in person, or if you've joined us online. Thank you for making Kensington part of this snowy morning. I do think, though, if you're at home in the comfort of your home and you didn't have to weather the storm like all these brave souls that are here in the building, you should open your windows and just leave them open for the next hour so you get a little taste of what we had to deal with today. But I do want to say that one of the things I'm most thankful for is actually this Wednesday night. We're going to have a celebration here of Thanksgiving, of gratitude, of worship, of teaching from Scripture that I get to be a part of. It's something that I've always loved, the midweek services when I was here. So even in a pandemic version of it, I'm glad that we can gather. And many of you, hopefully you'll live stream with us at home, and we can start off the Thanksgiving holiday in a position of adoration and worship and gratitude. Well, we're in week 4 of our How to Take a Hit series, which has really been a microcosm of this year, I think. But one of the things that we learned in Joseph's journey through all that he's had to endure, and we saw this last week, is a phrase that's repeated a number of times, and that is, the Lord was with him. And that really is something to celebrate, isn't it? Even in the trenches that we're in now, and maybe we've been in there for a long time, that we really can count on one thing for sure, and that is that God will always
I was in certain danger, caught in the crossfire of hope and regret. Thought I could be my own savior, but I'm sinking fast. 'Cause it's too much to handle alone in the battle. I'm desperate for you, Lord. Hard to fight, facing defeat, so close to surrender to my enemies. But love came from heaven to fight for me. When I am defenseless, you climb in the trenches with me. With me. Faithful from the beginning, Lord, you know my pain. You have been where but love came from heaven to fight for me. When I am defenseless, you climb in the trenches. The King of all glory made himself low to be my defender wherever I go. My shield and my refuge, protector and friend. You're always here with me. You're always here when my heart's under fire. I'm facing defeat, so close to surrender to my enemies. But love came from heaven to fight for me. When I am defenseless, climb in the trenches. When I am defenseless, oh, when nothing else could help, when nothing else could help, God stepped in and you made a way out of no way. Hearts under fire, I'm facing defeat, so close to surrender to my enemies. But love came from heaven to fight for me. When I am defenseless, you climb in the trenches. When I am defenseless, you climb in the trenches with me. Oh Lord, you're with me.
I'm so thankful that God climbs in the trenches with us. That no matter what the seasons of life are, that He is there with us. He really is. And sometimes these seasons, the difficult, the hard times of our lives, they're short. They don't last very long. But other times it is like it goes on and on and on. We are in those trenches, and if it goes on longer it gets, it's like the harder and the worse it feels like we're just taking hit after hit. And we're in this series called How to Take a Hit, and we've been looking at the life of Joseph throughout this series because he is a guy that endured a lot of hits, a lot of real suffering throughout the whole course of his life, really, for most of it. But yet, in all of that, he was actually never destroyed by it. Rather, he was transformed by it. And I think it comes back to this deeply held belief that he had, what that song talked about, knowing that God was with him. In those moments of his life that were hard and the suffering, God was with him. I think we can all agree that 2020 has been kind of a year of the trenches. We've taken a lot of hits this year, just locally within our own communities, as a country, as a globe, And in the midst of that, I know so many of us have also taken other hits that have been personal. And maybe it was a 1-2 punch, but some of us, it has been a year of just nonstop hits. And it's been difficult and hard, but in the midst of all of this, that God is still working. And we're seeing Him transform lives, even in the uncertainty. And so we want to share a story with you today of how God is moving. Because we want to let you know that when you give to Kensington for a year-end Christmas gift, that you are making an impact. It's making a difference. And so we want to share this video with you about Kensington's COVID response team and how they are transforming lives right here in our community. Watch this.
My COVID Response is a network, really, that brings together other organizations to help meet needs of people. Started during the COVID lockdown, just to help make sure that people were taken care of, particularly in Oakland County. My husband and I are case managers with My COVID Response. So we are connected with people who are in need, who signed up to say that they're in need. For the most part, it's food, but at the beginning, it was things like, emotional support, just checking on them, seeing how they're doing. Sometimes it was addiction support. Sometimes it was other things than food.
My name is Dustin McClellan. I serve as founder and CEO of the Pontiac Community Foundation, a work that has been dedicated to building a brighter future for Pontiac. And when the pandemic hit our doorstep, we pulled together a group of community members, community leaders, organizations, and partners to form the website and work we now know as My COVID Response. In the midst of the pandemic, we've seen some of the greatest need we've ever seen. People that were already considered marginalized or in need have had their needs go to the ultimate extreme. And so we've seen tremendous need and tremendous loss, but at the same time, we've seen tremendous collaboration and people coming together and serving and giving and helping. And we're seeing people meet the need like never before.
Carmen is she's kind of we call her the mama of the Hispanic, the Latino families in Pontiac. She is the liaison between the school district and all of the Spanish-speaking families in Pontiac. Now she is a case manager with My COVID Response as well, and she has the bulk of these Spanish-speaking families.
I've been with them from the beginning. Immediately when they opened it in March, I've been part of it. And I always feel that God brought me to Pontiac because I've been working in Pontiac for that many, many, many years.
Carmen's been through a lot over the last few years since I've known her. There's been some heartache and some struggle.
My husband was employed as a contract for Chrysler. He told me when the shutdown came, he told me, well, I'm sure it's going to be 2 months. It was only 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, he lost his job. It's difficult for me to talk about how difficult it is when you have the main provider in your home, losing their job, when you still have to support all of these families that you want to do. And then you start feeling mad at God because why is all of this happening if I'm trying to do the work for you? My oldest son was in China. He was working in China when all of this happened. But then we couldn't bring him home. Then I have another kid who is graduated from Auckland University in April, and he couldn't find a job. He started working in the fields, like putting fertilizer on the fields. So it was very hard for him. My husband, one day he went to the doctor, and in the hospital they told him that he needed to have some kind of surgery because they feel that he was going to have a heart attack. And they say he might need to have a heart surgery. So to me, that was like the worst I could do. I have to say that I was very, very mad at God at that moment. Very, very mad. I feel like I was being punished. I say, how I'm going to start school, working. I cannot take any leave of absence of my work because I need my salary. How I'm going to take care of my husband. But I have wonderful friends, so my friends were coming. No, you don't worry. So everything was settled for the surgery already. And then we received a call from the doctor. And the doctor says, we don't think that your husband needs the surgery. Your husband is going to be okay with medication. So I say that has to be God's hand. That's why God was telling me, you don't have to worry about things. Since then, I just feeling a lot of hope. Like my husband has been doing DoorDash, and then I've been helping, like on the weekends, I shop for somebody else's food. So we have ways to survive. But this family doesn't have ways to survive, and we are giving them that.
Honestly, if it were me, I don't know what I would do. There's grace on her life. God has given her grace in these moments that have been really, really, really hard, and he keeps her going. But it does feel like a punch. It feels like she's just like this punching bag, and she just keeps, and she takes it, and she's like, all right, let's go. She's tired sometimes, but she keeps going, and honestly, she's met Jesus. And I believe that her love for the Lord and her gratitude to him is sort of that catalyst, because she says so many times, I know God has me here for a reason. And because of that, because she knows that God has her there, she won't stop until he says you're done.
I think that the work that Carmen does and has done with the school district, with my COVID response, she really embodies what Pontiac is all about. And even at our core, in the midst of hurt, in the midst of pain, rising up and giving back is what it's all about. And so I'm grateful for people like her. I'm grateful for folks at Central La Familia that give back. I'm grateful all of the partners that have said, we're gonna do whatever it takes to make sure that people in need have their needs met in this season.
I think probably the biggest thing that I have learned over these last 8 months is the necessity, it's not even really an option, the necessity of keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus. He's the author and the finisher of our faith. If we take our eyes off of him, we start looking at what's going on in the rest of the world, and it'll take you down. It'll take you down. And you can't have your vision split like that. You have to stay focused on Jesus, because he's the only thing that matters, and from him comes every other good thing.
I think when the church gives back, and gives back in the way that people have done through my COVID response, they represent the very heart and character of God. When we first were beginning to help in the midst of this crisis, I saw myself as a 7-year-old kid, having come from the city of Pontiac, and what my family would have gone through in those moments if a pandemic would have come to our doorstep. And so we launched into action, but we launched into action not just for action's sake, but because it's the cause of Christ. It's his heart to help others that motivates us to do what we do. And so, I'm grateful for Kensington Church and people that embody that heartbeat. And I hope and pray that we can continue to do that work, not only during the midst of this pandemic, but even after it, as we all come together, we all rise together, the church united, to meet the needs of people in communities like Pontiac.
It is such a privilege to walk alongside leaders like Carmen, Jocelyn, and Dustin as they move out and care for the neighborhoods around them. You know, Dustin's right. When we do this kind of work, we are doing kingdom work. We're doing work that is rooted in the church. It's what Jesus designed the church to do. And I couldn't help but think, as I'm watching this video, of a passage found in Matthew 6. Is Jesus what they usually call the Sermon on the Mount? And he says this: seek first, or strive first, for the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well. As we seek God first, all of a sudden his community is activated and we start to see the need around us and we move out to do the work of God. Man, I was just so inspired by that, and I hope you were too. And I hope you also know that it's your generosity, our generosity as a community, that fuels these kinds of movements. And so as we now come to the end of 2020, I would ask you this: would you pray and consider giving a year-end Christmas gift to Kensington? Because it's that gift that could fuel the rest of our year as we do this kind of kingdom work.
Yes, God is moving. It's so encouraging just to hear these stories of how he is transforming lives here in our own community. And so we're so thankful for that. And just as Danny mentioned, you know, as this time of year, as you consider just the different ways that you could support with a generous heart, we hope that you would consider Kensington for a year-end Christmas gift, so that we can continue to reach the one here locally and globally. Because through your gift, we are able to reach people with the love and the hope of Jesus. And so thank you so much for being a part of our community and just for being on mission with us. We really are so thankful for that. So today is week 4 of our series, How to Take a Hit. And we all take hits in life. We all can agree on that. And sometimes they're a small hit and some are bigger. And it got me thinking to last Christmas. And so last Christmas, my family and I, we went to go visit my parents. And we were super excited because we were leaving on Christmas Day. So there's a little bit of excitement that comes with that. But it was also the first time in 20 years that I was going to spend Christmas with my parents. So I was like kind of on that high of like, oh my gosh, I get to spend with my parents and see them in Christmas and all that. So we were up super early, like at 3:30 in the morning to get to the airport because it was international flights and all this kind of stuff. And we get there, we're waiting, and I have a picture of my husband and I because we're happy. We're like, yes, it's Christmas, and we look kind of cute. He looks really good because we were going to have Christmas dinner with my family. I was really excited about that, and then we were going to get to do the gifts and everything afterwards, so we were like ready for this day, okay? And so we're waiting, and our flight is delayed. No big deal. We've all been there, right? So it's delayed, it's still delayed, and then I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, getting really antsy because we have a connection. I'm like, oh my word, what do we do? I asked one of the agents, she's like, well, if you go down to this desk, they'll help you. So I go down to that desk and wait in line because, you know, you have to wait in line 20 minutes, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And I'm just like, Merry Christmas, right? We're good. She goes, you can use one of the courtesy phones. I'm like, okay, cool. So I pick up that phone. It's like a 45-minute to an hour phone call, and I'm kind of anxious because I'm like, oh my gosh, is my flight? I don't know. And she's putting me on hold, trying to figure things out. Never really lands anywhere, but I'm just like, I have to go. I don't know if my flight, what's happening with that. So I go back to the gate. We're still delayed, of course. So then I decide to call the agency I booked through online to figure out, can I get a flight? And I'm begging them. I'm like, 20 years. I just want to have Christmas dinner with my mom. 20 years, please, anything. And they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe we can get you there tomorrow. And I'm trying to not cry and yell at the same time. All the emotions. And they're like, well, maybe we can send you down through Texas and then up through Edmonton, Alberta. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just please. And then I get this text and it's like, blah, 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 you've been rerouted, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, good. So I go up and they're like, yep, it's real. I'm like, thank goodness we got a flight. Okay, we're all good, but we're still delayed. We're sitting in Detroit still after all these hours. And then we finally get on a flight. We land into Toronto. I'm like, okay, this is great. We have an hour until our next flight. But then they tell us because of all the delays, all the misconnections, that we have to go get our bags. No big deal. We go to get our bags. Our bags are not there. So this day has gone from good to kind of, now we're in the bad territory, right? I'm like, not so good. So I go over to the baggage lady claim place. I'm like, we need our bags. And they're like, okay. They're like, oh, sorry, we can't find them. Okay, cool, no problem. Take your time. We got 45 minutes till our next flight. We're fine. And we're trying to be cheery with our boys. We're making memories. Yes, right? Christmas, this is awesome. 30 minutes later, my husband and I were kind of pacing. We're saying a few things under our breath, not gonna lie. We're like, okay. And then I'm like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? They still can't find our luggage. And then they're like 20 minutes until our next flight. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, do we just go and leave our luggage? Or do we get our luggage and wait here? Then we're stuck in Toronto? I don't know. And then I'm like, okay, kids, when we get the bags, you have to run with everything you've got, right? Like I'm trying to pump them up. I'm like, yay, Christmas, that's great. And then with 15 minutes left till this next flight takes off, we get our luggage and we take off, right? We are barreling through that airport. And of course, it's not like through the doors and up the escalators. It's like through the doors, up the escalators, across this terminal, up to this escalator, over to this escalator, elevator. And then, I was like, at one point, I don't know what happened to my youngest son. And I was just yelling. I'm like, where are you? Not my best parenting moment. Not gonna lie, right? We get to that counter and I'm like, and I am a hot mess. Like emotionally, we're not even, right? But I am sweaty and gross. And I'm like, my flight. And they're like, oh, good. We're just about to close the plane. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see your names. What? Right? The emotions, you know how you can feel it rise up in you? And she's doing her little thing, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. There was a miscommunication between the two airlines. I see your name in the ticket, but they were never attached. What? Like, what? And obviously at this point, the tears are just there, right? Any hopes of Christmas dinner is gone. I'm just like, am I stuck in Toronto? Like, oh my gosh. And she goes, well, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. But if you go to the end of the terminal, you can use the courtesy phones. I'm like, courtesy phones. So off we go. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen before, but it was like hot tears were spilling down my face. And it was like slow motion, right? And I'm just walking. Christmas music is blaring all around, like, Georgia! And I'm like, and no joke, this terminal was at least a mile long. I'm all the way down there. And we get down there, and I pick up that phone, and I'm like, my airline's not listed. Awesome. I now get to make an international long-distance phone call because this day has now gone from good and bad. We're kind of in the worst territory right now because I know Christmas dinner is gone. I'm like, is Christmas even going to happen? And so I make that phone call. It's 45 minutes, hour, because nothing's fast when you call the airline. And they're like, okay, yes, we can get you there, but we're going to fly you from Toronto to Montreal, which is further east, and then we can get you all the way on the west coast of Vancouver. And I'm just like, right? Like, what do you do at this point, right? It's a snowball. So I'm like, fine. So we end up flying into Montreal. And we get to Montreal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to call the car rental place because we rented a car. And I'm like, okay. So I call them, and she's like, oh, that's no problem. But just so you know, we do close at such and such a time. I'm like, of course you do. Because that is what this day is, right? And she goes, and if we have a car available. What is my car reservation good for if you have a car? So I'm just like, okay, Merry Christmas. And so then I have a couple pictures of kind of where we were at this point. Loving Montreal. My husband, I think, is even better because he really enjoyed. We're kind of done here. And so in this joyous Christmas mood, we get ready to board our flight finally to Vancouver. And my youngest son goes, I don't know where my device is. Of course you don't. Yep, it's on the other plane. So, okay, just taking another hit for today. It's going to be fine. So we finally land in Vancouver. We make it to the car rental place within like 10 minutes of them closing. And I'm like, finally, like we're fine. This is something we're looking at now. She goes, and we have a car. Okay, awesome. It is like this much bigger than a smart car. Do you know how big a smart car is? 4 people and all of our luggage, and we just went, because that is what this whole day has been. Now, the good news is, finally, like 24 hours later, we got to my parents, and we did get to have Christmas the next day. But it was this day where it was like one thing after another, like hit, right? And it happens in life, and we take the hits, and they all hurt, but some definitely hurt more than others. And I was kind of looking up some stuff when it comes to taking hits, and I learned that the shortest recorded boxing fight in history was 1.5 seconds. That's like, I mean, because they have those sound effects. You're probably thinking it was me, but it wasn't me, the fighter. But that's really impressive, though. 1.5 seconds, and the round was done. It was over, the whole thing. On the flip side, though, the longest recorded boxing match was in 1893, and it was 110 rounds. 7 hours and 19 minutes. I don't know who stood around to even keep track of that. I mean, I would have been gone, right? And here's the funny thing, is by the end of it, the referee called it a no contest. The boxers were too dazed to come out of their corners. But that's kind of how life is, though, sometimes. When we've been taking those hits, sometimes we are so dazed and we don't know what to do. And I think most of us probably have the faith and the stamina to do like a quick 1.5 or a couple of rounds. We got it. But when it's been 110 rounds, when it feels like we're in life and we're just taking hit after hit after hit, how do we do that? And so in this series, we've been taking a look at the life of Joseph because he endured a lot of hits. We began a couple weeks ago, and he was a 17-year-old kid, and he ends up getting thrown into a pit by his brothers. And then those brothers decide not to kill him, so they end up selling him as a slave, and he ends up going working for this guy named Potiphar. And at Potiphar's house, he has a wife, and she's like, oh, hey, Joey, come here. And he's like, And she's like, no, Joey, come here. And he's like, heck no. And he runs away, and then she's ticked, so she's like, tells her husband, he did this, and basically accuses him of like sexual harassment, and Potiphar's upset, so they throw him in prison. So this is where we find Joseph. I mean, he has been taking hit after hit. I mean, he's been separated from his family this entire time. That alone. And so we pick up his story here in the book of Genesis in chapter 40, and it says sometime later. Now, we have no actual indication of how long. It could have been like, a couple days, couple months. It could have been a year, but sometime later, Joseph is still in prison. It goes on and it says, sometime later, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and his chief baker offended their royal master. Pharaoh became angry with his two officials, and he put them in prison where Joseph was in the palace of the captain of the guard. They remained in prison for quite some time. So once again, we now know it's something later. And the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who looked after them. While they were in prison, Joseph's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. And he replied, and he asked, why do you look so worried today? He asked them. And they replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. Interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied. Go ahead and tell me your dreams. And they had these really strange dreams. Now, who here can remember your dreams? I kind of do, and if you're watching at home, we'd love for you to post in the comments and let us know. And I learned, or someone told me as a little girl, I have no clue if this is true, but that if you eat cheese before you go to sleep at night, you'll have strange dreams. No, I don't know. But even to this day, I'm really conscious of that. So the other day, I woke up, and I'm kind of processing my dream, because I'm like, oh, that was weird. I'm like, what did I eat before I went to bed? Was it cheese? So I have no idea if these guys had some nachos or some cold pizza before they went to sleep, but they end up having these really strange dreams. And so Joseph talks to them and is able to tell them what they mean. And so to the cupbearer, he's like, hey, you know what? You're actually going to get out of here in a few days, and you're going to get your old job back. But when you do, could you do me a favor? He says, could you put in a good word for me with Pharaoh? Could you let him know who I am, what I did? Because he's probably thinking, if he does that, in a couple days, he gets out, he gets his job back, and then he tells Pharaoh, maybe I'm out of here finally, right? After all this time, I can be out of here. Who knows? Maybe he started packing his bags. He's all right, time's up. And then to the baker, he goes on to tell him what his dream means, and he says, yeah, you're going to get out of here in a couple days too, but actually you're going to be beheaded and impaled. Ugh. I don't know what kind of cheese he ate, but don't eat that, okay? I'm kidding. So we pick it up in verse 20, and it says, Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later. And he prepared a banquet for all of his officials and staff. He summoned his chief cupbearer and his chief baker to join the other officials. He then restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Just another hit Joseph is taking, right? Ouch! He forgot all about him. And there's Joseph, just still in prison. And we fast forward a little bit, and we pick up his story in Genesis 41, and it says that 2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing on the bank of the Nile River. 2 full years. We know that there was some time, and then quite some time, and now we know that it's at least 2 years. And Joseph, he is still in prison. He's still just waiting there. Now, we don't have an idea of what he was doing or his thoughts or exact narrative. The Bible doesn't give it to us. But I wonder what he was thinking. We know that it says that God was with him, and really Joseph comes to a place of just surrendering his life to God. But if it was me, I'd be kind of like, where are you, God? Like, what the heck? I'm innocent. Why am I still here? Because for you and I, when the seasons go on and on and on, and it feels like we just keep getting another hit, it's frustrating. It's disheartening. I mean, at times it can feel so isolating and lonely and hopeless. And the longer that you keep taking those hits, it's really hard to remain positive. Usually we get to a point where we're just like, I don't know if I can do this. I know personally, I've been in a season in my life that has been difficult and hard. And it has gone on way longer than I expected. And sometimes it's excruciatingly heavy and soul-crushing almost. And I have faith in God and I trust him. And so I always have this hope, right? But at the same time, there's this bracing of the potential for more pain. So it's a strange tension to live in, this waiting. But we don't like to wait, do we? I don't want to have to wait when I order my food, nor do I want to wait for an app to load on my phone. I'm like, come on. And it goes into other areas of our life. We don't like to wait. We don't like to wait with God. We kind of sometimes put our expectations on him, how God should move and operate, how it should work out. And these seasons where it feels like it's hit after hit, we're like, God, this is how you should do it. This is how you should solve the problem. But we don't want to wait, though. We're like, fix it now. Whether it's in our relationships, our marriage, our finances, addictions, and your health, we want it fixed now. We want it to be a snap of our fingers and be okay. And when it takes longer, we get to a point sometimes where we're like, I'm done. I'm just ready to throw in the towel with you, God, because I don't want to have to wait. But here we have this guy, Joseph, who is still waiting. So what can we learn from him, right? What can we learn from him for the seasons that we are taking these hits, whether it's because of the own choices that we have made or sometimes it's just life, right? It happens. And you're like, I never asked for this. But what can we learn? Patience. Now, it's not a super slick thing, right? You're probably not going to go home and hashtag or tweet that. Patience, right? I mean, I was trying to come up with a creative way to say it, but I'm like, you can't. It's just patience. And it doesn't even give you an answer. Like, there's no resolution or an end to your suffering because of patience, right? It's not some key word. But patience is a discipline. It's actually a spiritual discipline. It's a work, and sometimes it is necessary for our own growth. But usually it doesn't feel very pleasant at the time. So we don't like to lean into it. Because if we want to get better at being patient, that means we're going to have to actually practice patience. In order for us to practice being patient, that means we're probably going to have to wait. And we don't really like waiting. But patience, it will cultivate our character. It's not going to necessarily give you the answer to the end of the suffering or the hits. But if you allow it, it will help produce and build, nurture your strength, your stamina, your resiliency. And I think probably the most important thing, if you allow it, to grow your faith and trust in God. I love what it says here in Romans 5. That we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. It's gonna do a work in us, but not just us, but in our relationship with God. And maybe you do not like what you've gone through or what you have been going through right now. And maybe it is not fair how long it has lasted. But how you respond to your present circumstances may create your future opportunities. So we have Joseph here, right? He's still waiting in prison, and we learn that Pharaoh has this dream. And in his dream, there are 7 fat, healthy cows and 7 scrawny, thin cows. And he is like, what does this mean? So Pharaoh goes to all of his advisors. He's asking them all these questions, and no one can help him. Like, no one can interpret it. But then, in verse 9, it says, finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. Today I have been reminded of my failure, he told Pharaoh. Some time ago you were angry with the chief baker and me, and you imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of the guard. One night the chief baker and I each had a dream, and each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what our dreams meant. Finally, right? Like, come on, dude. You were supposed to do this years ago. So he finally tells Pharaoh, and it goes on in verse 14, and it says, Pharaoh sent for him at once. And he was quickly brought from the prison. After he shaved and changed his clothes, he went in and stood before Pharaoh. I love those details. They shaved, right? His beard must have been awesome. So he shaves, he goes in and he sees Pharaoh, and he interprets a dream. Like, he nails it, and Pharaoh is like elated with him. So much so that he frees him from prison. Can we say, finally? Like, Joseph is free. But not only that, I mean, Pharaoh is so impressed with him that he basically makes him vice president of the nation. I mean, there's no way Joseph could have ever dreamed that that would have been his destination, right? This journey that he's been on, all the hits that Joseph has taken, he had no idea this is where he would end up. And when it comes to you and I, maybe we should look at these seasons where we are taking the hits a little differently. Maybe that it's not that God is taking forever, but maybe that he is actually forging your future, which is why we need to get better at waiting. So Joseph is free. I mean, he is out of prison. This is incredible. This is the outcome that we've dreamed of. But I think it's important for us, though, to realize that the focus really isn't the outcome. Because God doesn't always work in the ways that we think he should work. And sometimes it's amazing. There's going to be an answer. There's going to be healing, restoration, redemption. It is going to be beautiful. After a seasons of hits, you're going to be celebrating for what has happened. But there are other times it feels a little less redemptive. And it feels like you just continue to take the hits. And there really is no answer, and sometimes no celebration at the end. Someone I've been following on social media for the last couple of years, her name is Catherine Wolfe, and she's written a couple books, Hope Heals and Suffer Strong. But at 26, she suffered a massive and catastrophic brain stem stroke. It's a miracle that she's alive. But her life has been forever altered. But I absolutely love her perspective. She says that God's works are powerfully evident in the healing of our hurts, but perhaps even more profoundly in the not yet healing. That's why how we suffer matters. Suffering strong offers a unique testimony to all who witness it, unveiling an in the midst of God, who is too big and too good not to be worshipped, whether or not our longed-for outcome materializes. Because it's not about the outcome. It's about Him. So in these times when we are taking the hit after hit and we are praying and we're asking God for the answer, for the healing, for redemption, restoration, whatever it is, that's good. So don't stop that. But maybe more importantly, we need to be asking God, what do you want to do in me? Because yes, Joseph was freed from prison and he ends up, and it's an incredible story. And we see that he went from this young, arrogant kid that was self-centered, obsessed, prideful, to a completely different guy now. Like, he is different, and we're going to get to see that next week as we conclude this series. Because I think God freed him from a different kind of prison. He's different after all of this. So maybe these experiences that we go through really are an opportunity that God wants to work in us. And maybe he wants to free us from a different kind of prison. Maybe it's a prison where it's full of lust, pride, anger, self-reliance, fear, insecurity. Maybe this is the stuff. It's the sin that is separating and keeping us from everything that God wants to do in and through us. In Hebrews, it says that, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We got to get rid of the stuff, the sin, because it's weighing you down. We're tripping up. God wants to do so much in and through your life. And this working in our life, it's not because he wants to make us miserable, but because he wants us to become more and more like him, to be everything that he has created you to be. But we got to get rid of that stuff because it gets in the way. So he wants to do a work in us, because the goal of a Christ follower is not to have a life that is perfect and trouble-free. It's to have a life that is reflected on the heart of Christ, being consumed by him and satisfied by him. So then how do we do that practically speaking, right? When we are taking the hits and it feels like we can't go another round, or we're weary, we're tired, we're hopeless. The times when it feels like we're just crawling on the ground, how do we do this? I think the key thing is, or at least one of them is, to lean into the promises of God. The promises that say that, yes, that God is with you, that he is for you. But the difference is not just some Christian phrase, oh, that's nice, Jesus is with you, okay, awesome. No, it's actually when we become mindful of that and it's reflected in our life. Because when we become mindful of that, we start to live our life differently. We start to build the trust and the strength so that we can put up our fist one more time. That he will be that strength because we're focused on him. It's no longer about the outcome, because it doesn't matter, because we are satisfied and we are consumed with our God who's amazing, who is with us, and it doesn't matter how awful the circumstances are around us. But in order to lean into those promises, we have to know what they are. So really quick, this is going to be like a rapid fire. Just want to share just a few of these. Deuteronomy 31, it says, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will never fail you, nor abandon you. Isaiah 41:10 says, don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. Isaiah 43, it's probably one of my favorites. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you, 2 Thessalonians. But the Lord is faithful. He will strengthen you and he will protect you from the evil one. Philippians 4:13, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Psalm 29, the Lord gives his people strength. The Lord blesses them with peace. Isaiah 54, for the mountains may move and the hills disappear, but even then my faithful love for you will remain. 1 Corinthians 13:8, love never fails. God is love. That means God does not fail you. See, when we start to lean into these promises, we realize that he will protect you. He was with you. He is for you. He will provide for you. He will be your peace, and he will always, always love you. But we got to know them, so we got to read them. We got to study them. We got to memorize them. We got to pray them. Because if we actually want to live a life that is mindful of these promises, and where it's reflected in our heart and how we live, we have to spend time with them. Because then when we do, we live a life of surrender because we're consumed by him. A life of worship for him. Now, for those of us that call Kensington home, one of the ways that we worship here is by giving. And so we do want to receive our offering at this time because it is an act of worship. It's saying, God, I trust you. Even in the craziness of all that is going on in life, I trust you. And so there's different ways that you can give. You can give physically on the way out by dropping it in a bucket, or you can go online to our website, to our app. You can even text Kensington to 77977. And we say thank you for being a part of just what God is doing here and for trusting him. For taking that step to live a life to say, God, I surrender it to you and I'm worshiping you with my life, that I'm reflecting the promises of you, that you will take care of me, you will provide for me. Because here's the thing, in life we're going to take some hits. But if we want to be transformed by the hits rather than being destroyed by them, it's all going to come down to whether or not we decide to be consumed by him and the promises that he has. Because he is in the midst of God. Whether we're on the mountaintop or we are in that valley, barely surviving, he is there with us. And he is a good, good God who is always for us and with us. Will you pray with me? God, I just thank you. I thank you that you are a faithful God. I thank you that you are meeting us right here in this place, whether we're in the room or we're in our living room or kitchen, wherever we may be at, that you are meeting us. And I pray that we would truly believe and trust in you, Jesus. Because I know this has been a hard year for all of us, but I know some of us, it's been really difficult. And I pray that we would know your strength, God. I pray you'd give us your hope to make it one more day. We'd experience your peace, and that we'd lean into these promises, and truly they would become a part of us, that it would be reflected in our lives, God. That when nothing else makes sense, God, I pray that we'd always come back to you, that we'd lean into you, that you would be the hope of our salvation, God. Reveal that to us, Jesus. That we would continue to trust you, and we'd hold on to these truths that say that you are a good God who is with us and always for us. We love you, God. In your name, amen.
I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I 'cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I'm so thankful for the faithfulness of God and for his goodness. Because he is a good, good God. No matter what the circumstances of life might be, he is still a good God. He is a God who is in the midst of it all. And I would encourage you this week as we head into Thanksgiving to maybe take some time to reflect on his goodness. I know it's been a crazy year and things have not, well, what we would probably consider good. But to be mindful and to maybe thank him for the little ways and the big ways that he has been faithful to you throughout this year. And we hope that you will come back or online and join us on Wednesday night for our Thanksgiving Eve midweek service. It's going to be a great time as we just focus our hearts on Thanksgiving. And we hope you have a great holiday, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day. Bye.